Hey everyone, welcome back to the Day Raid and another morning walk and talk on a beautiful Tuesday morning here in Denmark. And it's been a while since we've done one of these videos. I feel like I'm always introing the walk and talk videos the same by saying it's been a long time, but it's true. And when we're in the off season and when we have spring break, when there's not much to really talk about, well, we're not going to put out a video just for the sake of doing it. So we're going to wait until we actually have something to talk about, and during that time the mailbag is filled up a little bit. I think we got some good questions that are not only going to tie into last season but give us a glimpse forward at what to expect from the Badgers in 2025, excuse me. So let's get into it. All right, and the first question we have, looking back on 2024, and I hesitated a little bit on whether or not to actually put this in, but I will, because I think looking back at the running game in 2024 is going to ask some good questions for us to answer going into 2025. So, and that is, what was the cause of the inconsistency in the Badgers rushing attack? Was it the personnel? Was it the coaches? Was it the simplicity of the scheme? What was it? Well, let's talk about that last part first. I wouldn't say what the Badgers ran schematically last season was simplistic, because it was basically the same schemes that the Badgers have run for decades. Now, obviously we did mostly out of shotgun, and that changes the approach, but the same basic principle applies in that you have to block the defenders who need to be blocked. You need to make the right reads, etc. And I think what ended up happening last season, like happens a lot in the history of Wisconsin football, is when the coaching staff or the offensive play caller has an idea of what's going to work, and when it doesn't work and we have to rely on the counterpart aspect of the offense to make up the slack, that other half didn't do it. And what I mean by that is, you look back in the day, you know, Jonathan Taylor was ripping off 200-yard games, but in the few games that defenses actually were able to limit him, rarely did we have the passing game, especially the quarterback play, to make the defense play assignment football and play balanced football. And I think we saw that last season. The passing game, for as much as Phil Longo tried, he could not get it going consistently enough to be a balance for the rushing attack. I think if you look in comparison to every other air raid or air raid adjacent offense, I think the Badgers ran the ball at a higher percentage pace than most teams did. But what the problem was is the passing game was nowhere near where it needed to be to then make the defense play true assignment football against an air raid offense. And when you did that, you had a passing game that defenses could commit as few as 4 players into coverage and were able to shut it down. So that left 7 defenders in the box. We can't block them all. And when you have a quarterback who does not have the mobility, or at least the willingness to be in the running game, to then hold one of those defenders, whether it be by making reads in the zone read game or simply making good decisions in the RPO game, you take the balance away, and then you let defenses play into the situations and systematically shut down both the running game and the passing game. Now, by Badger standards, the rushing game was pretty bad last year. Obviously, I've said it, I think Tui Walker ran out of gas towards the second half of the season when they asked him to be the feature back. I don't think he had the gas to be a feature back. I think that was the design from the beginning, and why they wanted to go by committee early was to limit the damage that Tui Walker would take and to keep his gas tank where it should be. But they couldn't get that solid number 2 early on, or the 1A, 1B with Ches, and that made Luke Fickell gun shy about trying to get a rotation going with Tu Walker and Cade Yakimelli and Darian Dupree, and we got the rotation that we got. Yes, Cade Yakimelli averaged 8-something yards a carry, mostly in garbage time, but as I've said before, he wasn't a complete running back enough to warrant every down reps. He had his where he would have been good at. So you had both the unwillingness and the stubbornness of the coaching staff to adjust to the roster. We had lack of the counterpart of the passing game to counteract defenses and keeping them honest. And you know, we always say coaches don't like to blame the players, but we walk around out of gas. So it is a multi-level problem that I'm hoping Coach Grimes has fixed for 2025. Speaking of 2025, I like this question because, you know, with what the information that we are getting released to us via social media, via interviews, we don't quite, you know, have a firm grasp on what they're doing schematically, both offensively and defensively this year. But we have gotten a little bit of a glimpse by just little clips of, like, the first episode of the camp that was put out not too long ago with Coach Fickell being wired up. And it's led to this question is, what is a star linebacker? I've heard of Sam, I've heard of Mike, Will, etc., but I've never heard of a star. What is it? Well, this is, for me, this is the type of question I love because it has multiple answers. And it'll be an answer that I'll be able to fully give you a clear answer the second I see it on film. But there are two general ideas that I can go for to give you somewhat of a response to it. So there are two schools of thought with what a star linebacker is that we can deduce from. One is from the Nick Saban system, and essentially the star is the 4-2-5 nickel outside linebacker safety hybrid. It's your box safety that acts like a 4-3 outside linebacker. On running downs, he's the type of guy that they'll drop into flat coverages, etc. He's an off-the-ball, out-of-the-box type player. And in Saban's system, it was more of a hybrid linebacker safety type. When we're hearing about guys like Thomas Heiberger and Aaron Witt, a little bit bigger guys occupying that star spot, at least from what we've heard in camp so far, that's leading me to think that potentially we are looking more in the Jim Knowles system and what he calls the Leo position. He has a left and right position, outside linebacker kind of hybrid. And essentially how he uses them is a little bit more like what we saw with Hunter Wohler last year in that dollar package, that kind of dog safety, but he uses true linebackers. And you'll see, again, what I like about Knowles and where I'm thinking this might be coming from is Knowles is very well known. And if you don't know who Jim Knowles is, he was the defense coordinator at Ohio State. He's going to be going to Penn State this year. And he is known for having a very multiple defense, and where he has different base personnel groups, but he does a lot with moving players on and off the ball and giving a lot of different looks with the same people. And that's leading me to think that this is where it's going. And so where we're going to see that overhang outside linebacker type kind of floating around and either being an extra man in the box, a an extra man on the edge. It depends on what is necessary at the time. So I hesitate to call it like a jack of all trades kind of guy, but he is going to be the extra off the ball outside linebacker. And to me, it's going to be really interesting to see how it's being deployed. The more and more I hear things and I see things, I think the defense to the layman is going to look like a 4-2-5 with 4 down players on the line of scrimmage, 2 inside linebackers, and then 5 defensive backs. But I think what they're going to be doing to get to that front is to be using different personnel groups. I think what we're really going to be seeing is 3 down with 3 down linemen, an end and 2 inside defensive tackles, a stand-up outside linebacker, 2 inside backers, and then either an extra linebacker, which would be the star, and a nickel, or a box safety and a nickel. I think they're going to work on situational football and try to get more players involved so they have size when they need size, they have speed when they need speed, and they're working players like Witt and Heiberger, at least when he comes back from being injured, those type of players in the hybrid roles to keep the offenses a little bit off balance. But I like that. It sounds like we're moving into a more multiple system defensively, which is, I think, what Luke Fickell eventually wanted to do, but he thought that sticking with the system that was built for the players who were recruited that he had was the right idea. Unfortunately, the Big Ten caught up with him real fast, and so now he needs to have a defense that is multiple enough to play against vastly different offenses every week. Let's talk about the running game and kind of dovetailing this conversation. We started with talking about where last year's run game went wrong. Now we're going to talk about how this year's run game is going to go right. And I've been hearing a lot of people talking about whether or not they feel like we have either a 1,000-yard rusher or a feature back, a lead back in the room right now. And when the room being so small in terms of number, we had 7 at one point last year, we have 4 right now. Can Jeff Grimes fulfill the promise that he made, or that people have assigned to him anyways, of bringing Wisconsin back to quote-unquote Wisconsin football with the run game? And what I'm hoping we're seeing is, it sounded like at the beginning that Darian Dupree, Katie Akameli were getting the majority of the reps. And then Dylan Jones was there getting into Tuca. Now it sounds like Dylan Jones is really pushing for reps. And we're going to be in a situation where I think there's going to be like a 3-headed monster for the running game, which makes sense in modern football because all 3 of those players have different roles. Now, I know you're probably asking in your head, well, if there's 3, there's not enough carries to go around. Somebody's obviously going to transfer at the end of the spring. I don't think so. And I think people are really surprised that Katie Akameli is still there, especially because it just seems like he always gets pushed out, even though he had the amazing stats last year running in garbage time. I think there's a key reason why Katie Akameli is still sticking around. And it's not about playing running back. And it's not about what we heard about him being a leader and all that kind of stuff. While that does play a part of it, I think he genuinely loves being at Wisconsin. I think what it comes down to is, if Katie Akameli is going to make a play to try to play football at the next level, it's not going to be as a running back. Katie Akameli is going to be a core special teams guy. And what I think we could be seeing with Katie Akameli this season is the college football equivalent of a Nate Ebner or a Matthew Clayton or a Matthew Slater, excuse me, or a Steve Tasker, if we really want to go down that way, where I think he's going to get more touches on offense, but I think they are going to continue to build him up to be a special teams star. So when he goes to the next level at the end of the season, sure, he might look to be a third down back, situational running back, but he's going to prove to a team that even though he's going to be the fourth or fifth running back on the roster, that he deserves to be there because of his special teams importance. I could be totally wrong. And he could decide that he sees that he's going to be the number 3 guy on the depth chart and he's going to get 3 to 5 carries a game, and that's not going to be enough. But if Cade is the player that everyone is telling us he is, that he's going to exhibit those leadership skills and still be important to this team while earning himself some money for next season. That's just my thought on him anyways. Regardless, I'm really excited about the makeup of the running back room going into the season, because I think you have, between the 3 top backs in the rotation, 3 different skill sets and a situation where I think we're going to be able to run the ball effectively. I think we're going to be able to get the running backs involved in the offense as a whole, but it doesn't exactly mean a specific guy is going to do it. Again, we look back at the numbers that we talked about during one of my spring preview or the spring update videos. As much as Coach Grimes has had a lead back, it really hasn't been a situation when there has been a guy who dominates the carries and everyone else is put to the wayside. I think you're going to get a situation where in a particular game, a lead guy is going to get 40% of the carries, and then between the other 2 guys and Jackson Aker and the wide receivers and the quarterbacks, they're going to divide up the other 60% of the touches. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a offense that is able to be balanced in the right way. And the right way is letting the defense tell them how we can beat them. By doing so, that's the most efficient way to gain yards and score points in football, instead of trying to bang something against the wall and hope that it sticks. So the running back rotation is going to level itself out, and I'm hoping it's going to be a situation where we have a solid, reliable run game without the necessity to have the all-world back that used to be what made Wisconsin football work. And we'll see about that. All right, and then finally, it's a very all-encompassing question, but what have I liked so far this spring? And it's a good question because at the end of the day, we really haven't gotten much. And I think that's been on purpose. One, obviously, they're making big structural changes both offensively and defensively. You know, you don't want to give away too much for free, because you know every school on the Badger schedule has an intern combing Twitter just as much as we are and trying to get as much information as they can. So they're not going to try to give away too much. But then also, it's just the name of the game in the spring. But what I've tried to take away is the little things. And what I like hearing when you listen to the players, and some players have given some interviews, words that I really like hearing, movement, don't know where the ball is, multiple, getting a lot of people involved offensively. That is a pleasant surprise. Or not a surprise, but a pleasant, I guess, outcome of this coaching change. I, for years, have been an advocate of using however many players it takes to get the job done. And when something goes down, and let's say you lose a player, instead of collapsing deeper into the cocoon and simplifying things, you're getting more people involved. And what I really liked about this spring is just how many people we've heard about on offense getting involved. You know, the receivers from Jalen Ballard, Vinny Anthony, Tretch until he went down, Tyrell Henry, Quincy Burrows at the last practice, freshmen like Eugene Hilton Jr., you know, guys making plays. And it means they're getting comfortable. And that is something we need. We need a team to bring us forward. We don't need a feature back. We don't need a superstar QB. We need a team that is going to bring us forward. Defensively, what I am enjoying hearing so far is the people who are there, who are seeing the practices and seeing how things are being run, can't really identify what they're seeing. And again, talking about the idea of being multiple, putting players in different positions, linebackers on and off the ball, using different DB combinations, etc. One, that's what spring's about. It's trying as much as you can, getting as much of that on film as you can, so then when you hit the dead period here in the off season or the summer program, you can start narrowing down what you're actually going to do once we get into game weeks. But, you know, with the amount the Big Ten has changed, you go back 10 years, and if you said pro-style offenses, that was 75% of the Big Ten. And if you said 4-3 defenses, you said probably 90% of the Big Ten. And that's how football was. Now, when you look at offenses and defenses, it is all over the place. Offenses from the from the air raid still. Wisconsin was not the only air raid team. There's at least 3 of them this year. To pro style, to pro spread, to power spread, to run and shoot. Defenses, we've got 3-4, we got 4-3, we got 4-2-5, we got Jim Knowles' multiple defense. So we have to have a system at Wisconsin that can handle all these different setups without having to drastically change the system every week. So you got to be multiple. And that's what I love hearing, is that we are moving away from a static, this is what we do, offense and defense. And it's going to be an offense and defense that the defense doesn't give up points and the offense scores points. That's the main goal. It doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there at the end. So I'm liking hearing that. Really like hearing that there's competition at some spots. And not only is there competition, but there's young guys pushing through in those competitions. And I think everybody just assumed that the right guard spot would be handed to JP Benchwall. And, you know, sure, he deserves his turn. That's true. But Emerson Mandel is young, big, physical. He is a Wisconsin-style offensive lineman, and he's a redshirt freshman. And as much as I'd love to get the vet in, if the young guy can push and get playing time now, put him in, because then you've got a starter for the next 3 years. You know, same thing, we're hearing Nolan Davenport running with the 2s at left tackle. Defensively, Heiberger until he got hurt. The list goes on. Young guys pushing to get playing time. Dean and Emmerich in the defensive secondary. this is what's going to push us forward and to help us catch up, is to get these young athletes on the field early and give those young guys the sense of ownership that they're going to need so they stick around for their whole career. Now, that's easier said than done today in the day and age of NIL, but we're going to do our best. So I just like hearing lots of different names. I like to hear a lot of different things of what they're doing, and I hope that continues here in the second half of spring, going into the quote-unquote spring game here. I think it was not this weekend, but next weekend. So we'll have to see what goes. All right, it is getting to that time at mid-morning here where everybody's out for a walk or mowing their lawn, and instead of tempting fate and to try to get through one more question, I think we're going to call it. So it might be a couple weird edits in here because I don't want to get in trouble with any privacy laws. So looking forward to the rest of spring, as spring football is wrapping up for the Badgers. Spring football is ramping up for me. I've already had 2 U19 games the last 2 weekends. My first senior game is this weekend. So obviously my day job takes priority in the spring, but we need to get out and get some fresh air. We need to take a break from work every now and then, and that's where the dare raid in Wisconsin football comes in. So I hope throughout the rest of the spring and going into the summer, as news breaks, we'll be there to talk about it. As new information comes to light, we're going to be there to dissect it. And when we get a chance to see what the Badgers are doing on the field, be here to add some color and some context to what you're seeing. And as always, as with the Dairy Raid, the goal is to enhance the game day experience for Badger fans by letting you know what you're actually seeing on the field when you see it. So let's see how the rest of the spring goes. Look forward to hearing more out of Madison about how these practices wrap up. And until next time, thank you for watching, and we'll see you then.